my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, everyone. Oh my God. What else can I say? It's just flowing. The last 9 days now, isn't it? Eight. It's just been such a pivotal moment for all of us here in the UK and also in the US. And now Rhonda and Kita has joined us, and Eugene and Bodhilila, and which is just such a joyful event. We even have Ronella from Japan joining us, and there's been people from India joining us. There's still people coming in, um, and so I'm hoping and that some of you will turn on your cameras. And so by doing this, you're actually taking an active step towards decolonizing healing modalities. You're taking an active step in being seen and being heard, in participation. So it's your choice, but if you feel that you want to be seen, swabona, as they say um, in Zulu language, I see you. Sekona, I am here to be seen. I am here to be seen. Until I'm seen, I'm not there, or I'm much better once I'm seen. So I'm going to turn you over, turn over to our host in a minute. But before I do that, perhaps we can go around and just see who's in these spaces. Just really soak it up. Soak it up. Day 9, day 8 of 9. So this is part 2 of the Courage to Love. And this morning we had such a great session doing the standing meditation, and Renica, who's recently taking vows and finish her completion in the Thich Nhat Hanh tradition, came in to say a few words, which were quite moving. But I'm quite moved by what I'm looking at, by the people here. We have Rhonda in her robes. We have a few ordained people here, actually. We have Imani, who's part of the Assyrian tradition, which is an incredible African-centered approach. There's so much wisdom and knowledge. Chris, actually, our host, um, is the founder and director of an organization called the Diaspora United. Is that right, Chris?
The Diaspora Reunited.
Pardon me, diasporareunited.org?
.com.
diasporareunited.com. So have a look at that. It's a fantastic project. That's what we need, isn't it? Unity. So over to you, Chris, and thank you all for your participation, for allowing me to see you and to be with you in your homes.
I want to thank William and all of you all for having me here from California. So I have an extensive background, as all of us do. So I just want to let you know a little bit about me and where my traditions have come from. I started in the Christian tradition when I was 16 years old. I was in a small town and I got saved and became a small town preacher at 16 years old and was on the little preaching circuit. And it was a real small town in Northern California. Rhonda, you might know the area. It's Pittsburgh, California, near Walnut Creek and those places there. So that's where I kind of grew up, and I was a preacher from different traditions. So it's a small missionary Baptist church, so an all-Black church, and then I was a part of another non-denominational, a large non-denominational tradition, and it was mixed, some mostly white, but mixed in different areas. One of the last places that I served was in Carson, California, and I was working with underprivileged youth there as a youth pastor, and then went on and on and on. So I'm also identify as a gay man, and I've been with my partner for 15 years now. But prior to that, I was married with a woman, and I have a son. He's 25 years old now. So I'm kind of all over the place with my experiences here. But I didn't come out until I was 45 years old to my family. And since now, my spiritual tradition is more or less not as Christian as it used to be. My perspective and understanding on belief has really broadened. So the thing that I would say for myself is that I am now very, very careful with how I exercise the power of my belief and what I put it towards. So I've understood that instead of the traditions that I've grown up in or been a part of, instead of them driving what I do, it's now flipped for me. And I'm more careful as to what I attach my belief systems to. Because after deciding what I would do after juggling the Christian faith, because remember, well, I'll tell you, so I was excommunicated from being a pastor from all those years and all the work that I'd done. I excommunicated within 5 days from a large major organization because I came out as a gay person, just totally cut off. So there was I didn't immediately felt that it was God's fault or anything like that. That wasn't a problem. But when I decided to perhaps look into another way of expressing my belief, the difficulty with me is that I had to then begin to learn new doctrines and be a part of a new community of leaders that, again, would have the position of deciding my position in their doctrine and their belief system. So I said, I don't want to be an atheist because they have a whole set of codes and doctrines. And I don't want to be an agnostic because they have a whole set of codes and doctrines. And everyone just had and I had already done that. I started when I was 16. So I decided, I think I want to be more careful with what I attach my power of belief to, that the ability for me to believe was intrinsically my own, and it was not necessarily something that had to be doctrine or traditional driven. So right now so with that in mind, as a pastor, it was very important to me to get to know the parishioners, the congregants. I spent a lot of time with families. And so I wasn't involved in the politics of the traditions, and there's a lot of politics behind the scenes. So I learned a lot about those behind the scene things. And I was somewhat looked at as the rogue guy, the black sheep of the leadership, because I never really fall in step. I remember one time I was counseling a troubled marriage, and I was told I could only counsel them for 3 times. Because the congregation was so large, I needed to spread myself out more, but I just needed to give more. So I kind of went in secret and would counsel the family at their house, off duty, so to speak, so that I can continue to be in their lives. So I was more involved in the people and not so much tied in the politics. So as a result of that, now, the exercising the power of my belief, as opposed to trying to learn a new system, a new doctrine, I've decided to put the power of my belief without all of those other things directly into the people that are in my life. So that's how that's happened for me. So and that's kind of how I'd like to see with the panelists, your thoughts and feelings when it comes to the title, The Courage to Love, and what that means for you. So for me, in this BIPOC space, is the courage to love my own and those who are parts of my own, that in the times of our growing up, it's been against the law in lots of places for us to gather and to be with one another and to associate with one another. And it took a lot of courage for us to not only see ourselves as valid individuals, but to in turn see our family members as valid individuals. We have been often hurt, at least I have been often hurt by the association of my family. But I know it's because of the trauma that our lineages, our ancestry have grown up into. So for me, the courage now is the courage to love that uncle that has totally gone astray in our family, in the sense that, or that auntie or that cousin, in the sense that you really feel that if I'll be guilty by association if I connect myself to them. So it behooves me to give more of my loving energy and time to those who are outside of me, even if it is outside of me in the realm of other Black folk. Or other people of color, I might be closer to other people of color than my own immediate family, for which I grew up in and around when I was 10 or 12 or whatever. And maybe even closer to other people than I am to my own father or mother or auntie or grandmother, like this. So for me, it's been the courage to love those around me and try to be as forgiving and as at ease with them as I am around all of you here. Some of you I don't know at all, but I'll spend 2 hours talking with you and telling you about me, and have never given that same amount of time to a brother or a sister or an auntie or an uncle. So the courage to love is the courage to love all of my own, not just those for which I feel comfortable. And that's where that word courage for me comes in. It's a courageous act to be able to look at myself and find out about the history of myself, how I came to be within my own ancestral line. And speaking about that ancestral line, it's also to understand that in the BIPOC world, the ancestral line is not necessarily a bloodline, because in the African-American tradition of slavery coming into the West, in Brazil and all these other places too, families were split apart. So let me take the example of the emancipation of 1865. So when all of a sudden it was given freedom, you can walk off the plantation. Well, obviously there were children there whose parents weren't on that plantation, who were not well enough to be able to be on their own. So that means the Black adults there took the 3-year-old, and that was their family member. And so all they've ever known, like as in some areas of adoption, all they've ever known is that person. So that is their family. So blood is not necessarily an indication of family. I'm the family genealogist in our family, and I've traced people on both sides of my family to the 1700s. It's hard to do, but it's not that hard once the paperwork starts rolling and once you learn about it. So with that in mind, though, there are so many people in my family tree who are not blood related, but don't know it because that's how they grew up. So for me, the courage to love is the courage to love my own, and not just those that I'm associated with by skin color, but my own for which are right around me. And the one final thing I would like to add, and that is thinking of the word ancestor. for which we commonly will use. Instead of, for me, I'm reminded that my ancestor is my family, is my great aunt that has a name, is my grandfather and his father who has a name. That's why I refer to myself as a living ancestor. Because how ironic, I mean, as soon as I go, all of a sudden I become an ancestor to my son's kids, you see. But that's not that far away. I'm still me. I had a life. I had hopes and dreams, and I did things, and I was an influence in my son's life, and therefore an influence in his kid's life. But as soon as I'm gone, all of a sudden I'm no longer Keita. I'm no longer Chris. I'm an ancestor. So I'm living my life as a living ancestor. All of those things that I wish that I had known about or learned about from my quote ancestor, which may have been my second grandfather, who had a life and who was alive and had experiences. Now I try to impart that now to my son so he doesn't have to ask or not know the answer to the question that his son may ask about me. So I see myself as a living ancestor because I'm family, because now I can see my great grandfather as a living person, not just an ancestor because of death. So the courage for me, and I remember when Will first brought this to me, and he said, you know, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase courage to love? And for me, it was that. Not only just the courage to love other BIPOC people that I see in passing, but to know that those same BIPOC people or Black people could have been and may have been a cousin that I have passed in the street or have gotten to know now. Some of you might be related, you know, we might be related to each other. So it's to begin to, for me, the courage is to love all my people all the time, whether I know they are family, quote, family or not. And at the same time, extend that same love to those who I do know I grew up with, my aunties and my uncles, like that. So thank you very much. If anyone could any of the panelists would kind of chime in on that and see how you feel.
If I may. Imani, thank you so much, Keita. I could really identify with much of that. And for me personally as well, you know, it's truly revolutionary when we come together like this, you know. I feel like we're doing something very powerful and revolutionary when we create these spaces and are part of these spaces as people of color, just as our ancestors did, you know. I too came from a Roman Catholic. I came from a Roman Catholic upbringing, very, very strict. I was, you know, in a school with nuns growing up, and came to the UK as a young child, and just questioned and questioned and questioned until in my 20s, I started to go on my own spiritual journey. You know, in my 30s, I became an Osirian. I started to follow the Osirian way of life, which is an ancient Egyptian Kemetic way of life, which I was actually blown away by. Number one, I didn't know that there were African or Black sages. I didn't know that there was a body of work around our spiritual tenets. And so a whole new world opened up to me in terms of our divine nature is a peace that nothing and no one can disturb. And that was one of the first sentences I read out of a book called The Medunate, Volume 1. And Ra'u Nefer Amen, who is the author of that book and the high priest, he's now got 8 volumes of this phenomenal, you know, epic. But in that book was the blueprint to the whole of creation. And it really taught me that actually I cannot disassociate, I cannot separate in my heart from anyone who walks who's on this planet or anyone who's passed, because we are intrinsically one. We're part of that oneness, we're part of that universal realm. And I started initially to take that really quite literally. And then I realized that, yes, there is an element of protection here as well for those who are still not ready to receive kind of care, or they want to damage you, they want to harm you. But I can still share that love with them in my meditations. I can still project that oneness and that peace and seeing them well in my meditations, but I don't necessarily have to go into their physical space, to do that. And that was a real revelation for me in terms of still opening my heart, still being pure of heart, still sending out that energy rather than seeking revenge on that person because they did me wrong or they said something bad about me. That to me was the most liberating part of my journey so far, in terms of truly what it means to love and be loved. But first I had to do a lot of work on me. I had to do a lot of work on that self-hate that I was carrying around, that little bruised, not need girl from the Caribbean, who didn't love themselves as a Black girl, you know, who therefore projected that outwardly. I had to work on me first, and that was quite a journey. It's brought me to this place now where ancestors are celebrated in my life. I pour libation daily to our ancestors. And part of that is understanding that they are honored ancestors as well. In Kemetic theology, we call them the Shepsu. And these are, people in my aunts, my uncles, I would term as ancestors. They're people that we remember every day in our lives, my father included. And then there was Shepsu. And these people like, Pepi the First or Queen Mother Nefertari or Queen Hatshepsut or Malcolm X, or Martin Luther King. These were people who lived their lives purely for the upliftment of others, purely for seeking justice and bringing us as a people back together. And so I pour libation to them daily as well. So that, to me, again, is that courage to love. Everything we do that celebrates that history, that legacy, that culture, to me, is an act of love, and so that's my take on it. Thank you.
Well, if I may follow those beautiful words from Imani and Keita, just to reflect a little bit, we reflected a little on whom to love, right? The courage to love, where and how do we extend that, and practices that support us, commitments, principles, maybe beliefs that support us. But just to open up the aperture a little bit on the idea of courage. Like what really is courage? What, and I really mean that. So how is it that each of us is holding that part? What does courage really mean? What does it mean to you? Has it looked like in your life? How accessible does it feel? Does it feel abstract, or do you have like concrete, like you feel like this is something you're like biting into and chewing in some sense? And if so, like what's the definition that comes out of our lived experience of what courage is? What is courage? So I really mean that, and hopefully we'll have some back and forth. I'm curious what's coming up for you all as you think about courage to love, the principles and practices, the way of being that supports that, the scope of that, right? I'll say for me, courage I mean, I'm a law professor, so I'm a definitional person. Over the years, I've looked at this definition. And you often see something along the lines of, that willingness to feel one's fear, anxiety, trepidation, terror, and take action anyway, or to be a certain way anyway. So often we think of courage, sometimes I think, as like not having fear. Like, right? That's like maybe some image out there. Like the person that's courageous has no fear. When actually those who really write, reflect, philosophers who think about this say, no, if you really look at it, it's acting notwithstanding the fear. It's like, I feel that, I'm gonna take some action anyway. I'm gonna be a certain way anyway. I'm gonna, in this case, care, love anyway. So I specifically wanted to pause and kind of open up that aperture a little bit, because that part is not easy. Right? Y'all, I mean, the courage part is not easy. And I think in our contemporary world, there is a certain kind of like, there can be lip service around this idea of courage. There can be, kind of a moving past the soft-bellied human difficulty of taking action, notwithstanding fear, anxiety, terror, vulnerability. But everything that has been mentioned, Keita talking about, sharing, giving us the gift of this testimony about being excommunicated, coming up against, resistance, after revealing more of who, right? More truth in a place where it wasn't accepted. Again, that's a kind of, okay, I feel something in response to that, but I'm going to take some action. I'm going to choose how to be in relationship with others anyway. So I really loved that idea of like choosing faith, or choosing how did you say it? Experience the power of your faith, right? Exercise the power of your faith. I love that. There's like a fierceness in that, like a courageous, like, it's mine. Right? And I get to, or I have the power to, I have the choice to, I have agency around that. But also Imani sharing about, having a sense of the value of a kind of an Afrocentric aspect or dimension to honoring ancestors, having a sense of sages who come from our ancestral lands and lineages, that not all the sages are white, or even for that matter, Asian, right? That, or even Native Indigenous, right? That Black folk are sages too. Then and now, right? So there's some courage in, like, saying, I may not see that, I wasn't taught, I wasn't exposed to, but some part of me recognizes the value of that. I might not, I might be in a place of not knowing, but I'm going to lean into learning and knowing. I feel like there's some courage in that. I feel like there's some courage in uplifting that which is not often being uplifted. So, thank you all for everything here, and for all the things that you already shared. And I'll just say that, in my work right now, I'm working on a piece of writing and some teaching, in which I'm really, as is often the case for my work, exploring how to bring awareness and compassion and love into these, the engagements in our social realm, our political realm, law, right? The hardest problems that we're dealing with, including race and racism. In the United States, we've got a lot of like this creeping kind of authoritarianism, like this sort of power politics is creeping up everywhere. And it's really, really hard because a lot of us are feeling more fearful because people are speaking things that are intending actually to cause us to feel fearful. William early in the talk spoke about the prevalence of gun violence in the United States. And of course, we all witnessed the shooting in Japan, or, are bearing witness to the assassination in Japan just yesterday. And that is just to say that although the U.S. has a particular shameful case right now in terms of the prevalence of violence and the threat of gun violence, we're all feeling our mortality. And research shows whether we're feeling more mortal because of the risk of some sort of violence or because of coronavirus and its implications, which is still with us, or because of climate distress, or because of economic inequality, or because of racism and sexism and all the isms in the way they interact and are, ageism, all of it. Whatever it is that makes us feel vulnerable, research underscores that, it's when we are confronted with our mortality, our vulnerability, one of the predictable ways we react is with othering, right? Is with closing down the sense of who can I love? With whom can I feel safe? So I guess I want to just call a little bit of attention to all that we're bringing into reflection here. And just open up a little bit with, again, love and kindness, so that all of the dimensions of that can be welcome here. We are feeling different degrees of fear and anxiety and vulnerability, each of us. We are feeling different degrees of, or one moment we can feel like, yes, I can open up and extend myself and care for people who don't look like me or who look like a shooter could look, right? I mean, whatever my image in my head of who might be the person that I should protect myself from. Some moments we might feel like, yes, throw the doors open. We're all one, right? We're all, one human family. We're kin. Radically, I think, actually, all of us around the world. Personally, this is what I feel. Ultimately, we're all kin. But that doesn't mean that there aren't moments when, I feel fear too. I feel like I'm safer in this little cottage that I have here, and I might just stay here for a while. So how do we work with those feelings? And that, I really feel like, to me, this is soulful work. This is like, just acknowledging sometimes I need my safer space. Sometimes I need my, my own special cups of water and tea and people that love me. And that's all right. But also, I think having spaces like this can help us open up more of that courage. So I thank you all for letting me be a part of your reflections today. And I look forward to hearing what's on everybody's mind.
So I felt very moved hearing that, Rhonda, and also Imani, and also Keita. There's so many resonances for me, but I think for me, especially going to the courage, and the courage being able to be with the fear and still to act, to make choices, and not let myself be paralyzed and not act. So I think a lot of my journey I mean, I know the theme of this is belonging. So some of it was a place where I could have a sense of identity in who I am and trying to find somewhere where I felt I belonged, because I've got so many different aspects of my identity. So I'd find a group and then they wouldn't accept another element. So for instance, and also that whole thing about the courage to love yourself, because I didn't love myself for quite a long time. Yeah, I grew up, I was in care and I was adopted. So I think there was an intrinsic belief that there was something wrong with me, which is why I hadn't, and although intellectually I knew that might not be the case, that was still within me. I mean, I was very lucky that I got adopted. I went just before I was about 2 and into a family. It was a Jewish family. My mother's family were German refugees from Nazi Germany. She actually grew up in Berlin when Hitler was coming to power. And my father's family, they were Russian Jewish refugees, again, coming from pogroms. So there was a kind of sense of fear within them, and a lot of that stuff that wasn't talked about, and also a sense of people not being trustworthy, except, you just stay within the family. And at the same time, things weren't really safe necessarily within the family. So I did grow up with a lot of fear and a lot of sort of feeling I had no agency in the world. I just had to sort of stay with whatever was there as best I could. And also I grew up in an area where I never saw another person of colour till I was about 17. So when I first started meeting people of colour, I was quite scared, and I never knew whether I would be accepted because I was mixed race. I'm half Chinese. And I'd grown up in a white family, and I had a lot of people calling me, I don't know if you've got the equivalents where you are like a coconut or a Bounty bar, where you're black on the outside, white on the inside. And I felt, well, I know nothing about being black. I haven't got a family, I haven't got a culture, and all of that. And it took me a while to be able to just think, well, I am who I am, and claim all the different bits of myself. And if I happen to be a classical musician and love Bach and Mozart and people like that, or I like Shakespeare and Jane Austen, yeah, that's fine. Like, there's other things about me that I also like. I like comics, I like superheroes and all kinds of stuff. But I think there was always that sense, like if I was in a group which was when I was getting into more politics and a bit more political views, being a feminist, or I'm also a lesbian, so when I was in sort of lesbian, or when I was in the sort of black politics and gay politics, it always felt like part of me was accepted and part of me wasn't. And people that I would be very close to would suddenly say something very anti-Semitic or homophobic or something. And then what do you do with that? So there was something about being able to stay in relationship and love other people, and also not go with the internalized self-hatred. And also being able to recognize that I had internalized self-hatred around all of those things. So, and that some of my survival methods were very much around assimilation. So, for a while I would feel a lot more comfortable, say, in a mainly white environment, because that was what I was used to. And yeah, it was just like, I suppose, having the courage to realize I had something to offer, and being able to risk being rejected, because for me that was one of the worst things, was to be not accepted, to be rejected, to be abandoned or whatever, and my whole fear of loss. And so having to sort of work with that fear, and also from a Buddhist perspective, and it was really helpful for me when I came across the Dharma and realized that actually everything is impermanent. Everything is happening in different sets of conditions, and this is my sets of conditions. And I still have choice, I still have agency, I can still do good in the world, kind of thing. And taking on a sort of like ethical values in terms of what my actions in the world can have harmful or beneficial consequences on myself and on others. So I think I've lost my track a little bit, but there's something about, I needed to get that sense of internal belonging and accepting and welcoming all the bits of myself, however messy, however flawed, except that I could be feeling murderous rage, that I could feel all this grief, that I could feel depressed, that I could be, all sorts of things. But I think I've always lived with fear, whether or not I've been letting it more into my consciousness. And, I still find it, a lot of the time I'm feeling much more confident in myself. There's no way I would have put myself forward to talk on something like this in the past. And I'm still really scared of getting rejected by my community or by a friend. And, I'm having those situations at the moment. And then there's the values that you think you need to stick up for, so there's stuff happening within my particular spiritual community in a certain way, but, I don't think are good. And do I stick my head up and challenge them? There's somebody who behaved badly in a situation that it wasn't me that did it, but it's sort of like, well, how do we address this when it harms somebody else, unaware that actually the person who harmed it has got quite a lot of power and networking and all that kind of stuff, and still feeling, yeah, we need to act on this, not knowing what effect it will have. So I think for me, some of the courage to love is the courage to care about other people and their well-being and do the right thing. Some of it is in terms of the friendship and the community and creating positive conditions, like this, like other spaces that may be helpful for people of all kinds. I think when I first discovered Buddhism, because I'd been in a lot of political groups and I'd noticed there was quite a lot of power dynamics and people being harmed in those spaces, there was a whole thing, oh, I just want to connect with everybody, regardless of that. And we're all people. And then, of course, whatever situation you're in, we're all human. There's always politics, there's always power dynamics, there's always everybody's conditioning that all gets played out and causes all kinds of stuff. So it's being able to work with that, engage with that, coming from a place or an intention of care and love, which you can't always feel, and if I'm not feeling that, to just, allow myself not to feel that. And if I mess up, I can get into a lot of self-blame. And then just sort of try not to do that as a sort of more of an act of self-love, that, you do the best you can in the situation. And other people are doing the best they can in the situation, so try not to blame them as well, even if it may be very tempting. So I don't know if any of that made any sense, but those were just some thoughts that arose from listening to the others.
Bodhila, is that how you pronounce your name?
It's Bodhilila, like the Bodhi tree.
Bodhilila. I just wanted to kind of jump in and share, and I know that you all have some other thoughts that are kind of rumbling around in us from the different experiences that have already been shared. I wanted to also say that my wife, my first wife, my only wife actually, is Chinese. And so my son, my only son, is half African American and half Chinese. So he's actually taken the ancestry DNA. So it was just kind of wonderful to see on paper that it says half of his body is Chinese. I mean, all half, and the other half is of African descent. And so what was enlightening is that when it comes to this idea of belonging and of self, and the courage to identify and who you are coming to be, is in light of my son. So he is 100% identified as Black. Now, I know that he has a rich Chinese heritage. It's very close to his Chinese family. Eats Chinese food I wouldn't touch, because that's how he grew up. But in the world, he's not Chinese? How do you navigate that as a human being that says the society will only see you as half of what you are, when all of it is, he spent more time with his Chinese family at the beginning of his life than he did with his African American family, because we lived next to his Chinese grandparents. I actually was not accepted in the Chinese family at the very beginning. When I married my wife, then her family basically excommunicated me. They did not want us to get married because I was Black. But as soon as that grandson came, everything changed. And my father had told me this. He said, son, don't worry. As soon as that first grandchild comes out, let's just see what happens. And I had not communicated with them during the whole pregnancy. Only my pregnant wife could go home. I couldn't even come to their house. So at the hospital, I called, because at this time, my wife was pretty much incapacitated. She could call anybody. I called her parents and asked her parents to give their grandson a middle name. And that call prompted them to come to the hospital. And that's the first time I had seen them. All together around this baby. Now, this baby came out darker than me, so I just could understand it if it was really a color. But they named him Hue, which means bright star. And his full name is Josiah, after the boy king, Matthew Hue Caldwell. So this idea of belonging and who you belong to, and courage, and encourage to love. My son is very, very autonomous. He's very singular, because he realized that he couldn't be just Black and he couldn't be just Chinese. So he became just to be himself. And no matter what anybody else around him tried to identify him, he decided that I know who I am and I love all of me. And it's up to the people around to decide what part of me they want to love, but it has no bearing on who I love and who I want to be a part of. So this idea of courage, I'm just kind of throwing out, is, for me has been, and the understanding of it is that I can be autonomous and not allow my beliefs about how other people believe be my guiding directive force in how I treat myself. Because the whole ideal of hating myself or not understanding myself can be merely a reflection of what others believe about me. And so I'm taking that on. And so when my wife's parents could not accept me, I just told her simply, you know what, I'm not welcome in their home, but you go, that's your parents. You be with them and don't worry about me. Because I wasn't in the position, I was autonomous. My happiness wasn't dependent upon their happiness of me. It wasn't even dependent upon their happiness of their daughter or what they approved of their daughter. So I had to begin to decide that when I believe something, it's not necessarily even my belief, it's what I believe others believe about me, and take that upon myself. And then that's where the hatred can come in, or where I disqualify myself. So it's a courage for me to love me without the barrier and the trappings of having to consider others' belief system. So when I was excommunicated from the Christian church, it was like, well, am I upset at the belief system that I adhered to? because they believe that. So it was I loved myself already. I already knew who I was. I wasn't conflicted with my sexuality. I just knew that I was, how do you say, doing my best to be connected to community within the confounds of their belief system. It's the same thing I do as an African American. I do my best to connect in a white society in the confounds of their belief system. They don't believe and think too much of me, but I can't allow that belief, which is theirs, to affect me. So there's no need to hate myself necessarily. So yes, I did grow up conflicted with, white people, Black people, Chinese people, all these things. So my offer is in the courage to love is the courage to be autonomous, even inside the belief systems that you find yourself attached to. And not necessarily, for me, to practice being so loyal to that belief system to the point that it damages me, where I lose myself. So yes, I listen to all kinds of music. I'm just not a soul music person. And me and my brothers had this conversation to where one of his friends, who's African American, will only listen to African American music, knows nothing of Led Zeppelin or anybody else. It's only African American music because he's tied his belief about being Black within the Black community, not allowing himself to be autonomous within his own community to explore other things. So as we're continuing to reflect on this ideal of courage to love, I'm also curious to know how that courage to love relates to your interpersonal relationships with those you call family. So so for example, I'll give you one of mine. I found out that later on in life that my biological father was different from the father who raised me. And so I had to, at that point, and I didn't know. I didn't know until I was 50 years old that the father I had been living with was not my biological father. It goes to show you how much love was coming through that non-biological father that I didn't even question or ask. And I really looked different from my brothers and sisters, but I just never questioned. I think I did once when I was 11. And I asked my mom that she'd seen the milkman one day. And she said, "Don't worry, son, you're mine." But at that age, I didn't realize it really takes two people to make this happen. So for me, the interpersonal relationships is the courage to continue to love the family that was my family. So my father's family line, none of them are blood related to me. So once I found out this information, it was the courage to continue to love, not to feel I had to be detached from the people that I grew up and loved me. And at the same time, the courage to love the biological side of my family tree as well, and to be connected. So as we continue to talk about this courage to love, since this is a unique platform where we're all together, I'm curious to hear how we as BIPOC and a people of African descent are exercising or feel the need to exercise or need the support and encouragement to exercise courageousness. As Rhonda opened up that wideness of definition that we've kind of heard of what that is, can be, how that relates to your immediate families, uncles, cousins, known, unknown, if you stayed away and strayed away, from wanting to reach out to them. It's a very, and for me, it's a very slow process. It's just now the awakening and the openness of feeling that now I can approach an auntie or an uncle that I may have never really known, but only know by name, but I know where they live or something like this. Maybe making that phone call or that connection just to hear more about me and my family ancestral experience. So I'm curious to hear that, and also what has already come up for you with prior experiences you've heard from others.
So we're just hearing, excuse me, Keita, thank you for your share. We're just hearing from Ranella, who's in Japan, who just wants to open up her mic. Go ahead, Ranella.
Hi, everyone. I was asked by William to share a piece that I wrote in response to a lot of what I guess you all are speaking to now, related to belonging. So I would like to share that, and I'll always preface, sometimes my poetry can be a little blunt or harsh, so I want to say that please forgive any offense if it is caused in this process. It's coming from, I write poetry not for others. I write it as a therapeutic process for myself. And I think as I reflected on this idea of belonging and the gun violence that has taken place in the States, I've been living in Japan here for, well, Asia in general for the past 11 years. And so it always, I think it increases my sensitivity to what I can hold space for as I live outside of the United States and don't meet these occurrences on a regular basis. Even this recent shooting here, I think that's the first time I've ever even heard of a shooting in Japan since I've been here. Like, this is not common. The police don't carry guns here. Everyday citizens are not permitted to carry guns here. So this is like, really trauma inducing for the community here. So anyway, I preface that before I share. So hopefully this is useful for some of you. And I'm thankful for being able to share here. So this piece is called Belong. Honey, sit down, for freedom won't be long. I promise. Now stand up, for holding the resist stance won't be long. I promise. There was a time that ticked and a time that talked, waiting to belong. Belong or short clips, reeling over dipped hips, splits, and tits. We really belong, overdue for a look. A sit down to comb our fingers through a book and delay gratification. Long enough to be long. Stand up and count the centuries they took. They delayed emancipation. Long enough to be long. Yeah, I guess it simulates wings or broken chains without breaking a damn thing, but virtual reality helps you to feel like you belong, right? While our actual reality would help you to realize you just belong anticipating. Whether I sit or stand up, I don't belong. Not at church, schools, pools, or podiums, unless it's sports or courts, because they just want me to be strong or they want me to be gone, unless they want me to sing songs. I believe they want me to miss the dawn of Ra. They want everything except to right wrongs, because I, in the end, can see there is no belonging thing. How can I belong to something I didn't create? Why would I be longing for such a mistake? The rape, the pillage, the spillage of traditions, the take, the mission, the killing expeditions, mind body morphosis made beauty into beastly bleached bodies and castrated nostrils, washed out histories, messaged in a broken bottle. We were never meant to belong because this is set up. Our sense of being, belonging has forced and fucked our heads up. Their tricks will have us longing to be swept up and messed up, hooting and hollering over masks of past floating progress, POTUS and FLOTUS, looking more like the largesse of Hocus and Pocus. Current Prez and his number 2 who decided how to be Black and to be Black while voting when yellow wouldn't do because she technically belongs. Yet that age wouldn't be choosing to see you if a ballot wasn't in view. But let me shut up. She made you feel like you belong too. To pursue acceptance is a farce. Each millennium that comes shows acceptance to be sparse by this system, right? Belonging is not something with which you can grant money, power, respect. You can't rant and rave with no saves left and expect to enchant the enterprise. The house takes the top. Belonging must be implanted with impact from jump and nonstop. Long before we were extracted from mother, long before they made us and we agreed to be othered. Listen, long before our ancients could be bothered with explaining to them how to use soap, we belonged. You could have hoped by now we would have left this quest alone. Hoped by now we'd see the drones that clone our hearts and minds. We have to start to climb back to our belonging all unto ourselves in kind. We have to start belonging all on our own and leave Yurugu behind with the spiritually perverse and the wickedly poor. We have to settle this game of imbalance, this crooked and concocted score. Will we ever recognize the glory we knew so graciously before? Recognizing ultimately to belong is an internal Black art of war. So belong, take charge, and stop asking for what's all and readily yours. Thank you.
Back to you, Keita.
Thank you, Ranella. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And just asking you all, as we are about an hour into our being together, how has some of these things come up for you? And I'll start with Eugene.
Thank you. Beautiful poem. Yeah, really moved by that, and really moved by you, Keita, what you're talking about, Imani, Rhonda, Bodhilila. Yeah, just following on really from what people are, you know, this theme of courage, I guess, this theme of love, courage to love. And I didn't really know what I wanted to say coming in, but obviously people have said what they've said, and it's kind of just had an impact on me. And for me, I guess love is about sort of breaking out of fear, I guess, and delusion. That those are the sort of two things for me. I'm just aware of myself being in fear and noticing it, and somehow managing to find a way to sidestep it or to do something with it. And I guess that's been a process over time. Certainly in my earlier life, fear was really the sort of predominant feeling. I had lots of violence within the family. That was the main place that it appeared to me. And also, you know, listening to the news and just having this sense of this fear-driven society, I guess, and confusion-driven society that we live in. And this idea of family, I mean, right now, I've got 6 siblings, and kind of, in some ways, we were quite sort of separate, you know, we were doing our own thing. Our mother's not that well at the moment, and so that has been something that's kind of brought us together. And you know, seeing them in new ways, you know, because, you know, we're all required to be together on this WhatsApp group, and we're sending messages to each other about, you know, how our mum's doing. And that's been a real journey, actually, just yeah, reconnecting with them as just human beings, you know, rather than your sister or your brother. Yeah. And I remember growing up, we as a family, we were kind of quite a separate family, I guess, from the wider family. We lived in London. Most of the rest of the family lived in Birmingham and other places. And to some extent, that's still there, that kind of estrangement, really, from the wider family, still there. There's a few people that over time I've sort of made connections with, but yeah, and I'm just wondering what that's about, what's preventing me from making those connections. And I guess it's fear as well. In terms of fear, what's dissolved the fear is certainly, I mean, I'm a therapist, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm also I'm on this order journey through the Triratna, a Buddhist community. So, but certainly I was on a sort of therapeutic journey from about 22, 25. Around that time, I sort of started to think about myself in relationship to myself and others, and began this journey with looking at the fear, looking at my relationship with my father, and where I got to was kind of, you know, seeing us really situated in a particular time, you know, with an ancestral history that's sort of come before us, and it's going to continue. And you know, just having that that perspective really began to dissolve the fear of that was generated in that particular relationship. And you know, in terms of sort of delusions, I guess. I mean, I remember starting with the Triratna order. It's called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order at the time when I started, and then there were these POC retreats. And I don't know, somehow I just thought that I was living in kind of yeah, mixed spaces, mainly white spaces, people of color spaces occasionally. But then I thought, yeah, on this retreat, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be with my people. I'm gonna be a different person. I'm gonna be more myself. I'm gonna be more something. I was gonna land in this place. And as the retreat progressed, I just kind of began to sort of see myself as exactly the same person there than I was anywhere else. It was very disappointing, I have to say, but there was some delusion that I was having with myself about who I was. These white people were doing this, they were doing that, and they are preventing me from doing X, Y, Z, and that was the narrative. And then I had to really kind of reassess that narrative. And there is something about that. There is some objective truth in that somewhere out there in the world, but it wasn't the case in this place. So I had to reassess that. So, and there's been a number of delusions that have been examined, I guess, over time. Also, my relationship with my partner right now, we're married. Remember when I first proposed, afterwards, maybe for weeks, all I could think of was death, all I could think of was the end of the relationship. We was I was in my late 30s at the time, and but I just thought that the end, when she dies, that's kind of where my focus was. And why can't I just enjoy this relationship that I was having? I mean, I did, but then so that was kind of, and there's something about just the intrinsic pain and suffering in relationship. It's part and parcel of it. It's you can't have one without the other. Again, another delusion that maybe we're going to have this pain-free, Hollywood kind of experience together with, and they normally end somewhere before the pain begins in these kind of relationships. And so again, just just sort of sweeping that aside. And the therapeutic spaces that I've kind of been have the privilege really of setting up within the UK, of therapists and therapists of color coming together. I mean, the idea is that we get more therapists of color. That's just like a bigger aim. But what was clear really when we started meeting up as a group was that people felt alone, and certainly therapists felt alone. And this idea of coming together kind of created something. Some weight was kind of lifted from their shoulders. I could never really explain it. But then after sort of thinking about it for a while, I mean, basically, for me at least, this idea of sort of being vulnerable and saying you're scared, as a black person, black man, I'm scared. It's like, well, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to keep that under wraps. But having a place to sort of explore that, to say that, to be vulnerable, to be received in that vulnerability, to be attended to be hugged, when I've cried, and and for me to do the same, for me to look after other people when they're vulnerable, support them, hug them when they cry, and that to me really is getting to that place where you have these opportunities to do that in this space. Can just kind of, something happens with the fear, something happens with the delusions, and things become clearer. And when you're out in the world doing your stuff, whatever you're doing, fear is there, as Rhonda's kind of alluding to, but you kind of just do it anyway. And and this idea of support as well. I mean, I guess that's intrinsic in these spaces, isn't it? Support. just how little people can see the support around them. It's really quite amazing. As a therapist, you see it so clearly. You know, there's this sea of support out there. I mean, it's everywhere. You just walk out the front door and there's support there. Somehow, we're conditioned to not see it, and so that's another journey, and certainly a journey for me. Just having a sense that no matter how bad things are, that there is some support somewhere, and even if you're not actually accessing it right there and then, it is available. Yeah, it's available at some point. And yeah, really resting in that place where that's sort of, where that's kind of happening. And the last thing I want to say is about the network that I run. I've got this person, this kind of very corporate person. You need to put some strategic values and a plan together. I've never really had a big plan about it. I've just sort of gone with the flow, and what people wanted. Yes, we'll do this, we'll do that. So I was tasked to create this plan. It was very hard for me. My brain isn't like that. Then there's this idea of values, which came up on this sheet that I had to complete. And I sort of found myself, having to really think about these values. What values do we want to support? I guess in this sort of therapist network of color, and in a way, these are kind of pretty straightforward values, really. I guess if you're a Buddhist, or if you're someone who's wanting to work on the soul and from the heart. But in the therapy world, that's not really how things get organized. It tends to be sort of a bit more kind of, I don't know, less soulful, I guess. So these are the values that I've come up with. So all are worthy of respect. For our work to succeed, we need to start from a place of value and worthiness of all people. That's value number one. Value two, strength in collaboration. Working together as a community and not in isolation is paramount to our healing. Value three, compassion is an action. The work of undoing racism is hard. To carry us through, it is important to develop a compassionate heart for ourselves and for others. Listening, value four, listening leads to understanding. Growth does not happen by chance. It comes from compassionately listening to ourselves and others. And the last value, value five, is a courageous heart. We courageously go to new places, knowing we have the support of others. So to me, that is, that sense of the many places where support exists, and being able to see it, really be able to see it, and then really move towards it. And this process, I guess, for me, I guess it's been said by Keita as well, of being more yourself, and the fear of that. It's sort of, there's an intrinsic, it's almost like an inbuilt fear in society, isn't it? Being the self, being yourself. We're all supposed to do something other than be ourselves, anything else but ourselves. This is the plan, and it takes a lot of work to break out of it. But that to me really is breaking out of that is the courage to love. Thank you,
Eugene, so much. And I just wanted to put in the chat that if you'd like to share something, you can raise your digital hand or just open up your mic. We have about 40 minutes left, and give anyone an opportunity to speak their thoughts.
Well, I was just struck by how Eugene ended with the talk about the courage and the courageous heart, and one of the things I've always found quite inspiring amongst the Buddhist teachings is the idea of generosity and all the different things that you can give. You can give in material ways, but you can give your time, your attention, you can give education, you can give culture. And then we get to gift of confidence or fearlessness, is one of them. And I remember at first thinking, well, how can that happen? But as I've been practicing over the years, I've realized that there's two main ways that I think I practice trying to give the gift of confidence, and that is partly if I am able to be more authentic and be more myself and be vulnerable, that gives other people the courage to do that. And the other is, to see people as they are, to recognize and accept them as they are. And sometimes we can see things that other people can't see, and to sort of be glad and rejoice in their qualities, and actually not just to think them, but to actually let that person know, or to mirror back to them, oh, I really like this about you, or that I really admire this about you, So I think there's two things. One is a sort of like interactive, supporting other people and helping them to see how wonderful they are. And the other is actually just being yourself. And we're all so different, but the more that we can be ourselves, I think the more we give permission to others to be themselves. And I think that all links into this whole theme of the courage and the belonging, and that we all need to reach that place of accepting and being ourselves in relationship to others.
Anyone who hasn't shared yet would like to just share, and then we'll take a few minute break just to kind of stretch it and stuff like that. William?
I'll just say something very briefly as I was hearing the panelists speak, and even Bodhilila when she was speaking about being adopted, and that reminded me of me being brought up by my grandparents and feeling orphaned. And we never stop being an orphan. It's not like when you become an adult, suddenly you gain parents. I miss actually not having parents more now than I did when I was a teenager, because my grandparents were exceptional people, really kind-hearted people. But as soon as when I met Bodhilila, I fell in love with Bodhilila. And the reason I fell in love with Bodhilila was in the shrine room. And we were on a People of Color weekend retreat, and she started chanting. And the chanting just resonated the whole room, and everybody felt it. I told this story to Bodhilila before, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just pure love. This shows a whole lifetime of practice, and it was like that was so nourishing. That weekend was so nourishing. And actually coming back to that retreat, my cat was run over that I had for 7 years, and I was in such a good place that I was so calm through that whole. Normally I would be a big drama queen, but I was really, really, really calm and quiet. Everybody was shocked how still that chanting in that weekend actually prepared me for one of the worst days of that year. And so those weekends, that practice prepares you for what we don't see. And actually every panelist here, Eugene and Rhonda and Kita, everyone has loved me in a different way and has contributed to that pain that I've have felt for a really long time. Everyone has contributed in one shape or the other. I know I've called many of you crying on the phone at one time or the other, and even the people forming this community like Rita and Imani and Hyson and Ranella, the people I'm getting to know, I'm feeling their kindness, I'm feeling their generosity, their ancestors, everything that they're bringing into other people. And so it's like being of service, isn't it? I love that in other people where they're reaching out to other people, the selflessness. That's so healing. That's so healing. So for me, the courage in a nutshell, because I'd like to hear from a lot of other people, was to go beyond the stories that I was told, the conditioning that I was given as a child, growing up as a Hispanic in the Bronx, that I had to die there, either physically or mentally or spiritually or all of them. That was the end of me, like so many other children and that had to die in Harlem and the Bronx and all the other neighborhoods where there's crime and oppression and racism and the effects of it. That was that was how I was supposed to live out my life. So to me, the courage was to really go beyond their vision, their limitation of me. And I think that was a big step actually to flee in the other direction to a country I didn't know, and start all over again, beginning again, as Rhonda uses this phrase, beginning again. So that was courageous. And now that I look back, I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't do that now. Like reset. I was like, I'd be terrified. But yeah, I mean, just these 8 or 9 days have been so healing. Just having you, all of you right now in this space, looking at these squares. I wish they were circles, actually. It would make more sense if they were circles. But yeah, it's been so healing. I'm feeling the love from all of you. And if I died in this moment, I feel I would die complete because of all of you. I feel like, okay, this is what I needed. I needed to mend. I just need to mend. So that's my share.
I will share if I may. Thank you. I had my hand up earlier, and everything I have heard and the way it's been expressed has really moved me, because our courage is so much part of who we are being in any given moment, especially with one another. And I think it's only when we share with others that we get to understand what our courage is. I know that we can perhaps get an idea of it when we are on our own or facing a particular set of circumstances, but we don't get to express and radiate it until we are with others. And I look back on my life, and I've heard so many stories of pain and travail. I mean, the things you shared, William, and that's not been my experience. My experience has been other. And it's not because I haven't been in places where I have been discriminated against or felt the pain of that, but I haven't lived life at the coal face the way I hear you talk about it. And yet I'm faced with the question of, who am I? What is my courage? What is it I deal with that I can say I am growing through what I feel, what I experience, how authentic I'm being, because all our lives contribute something wherever we are, And I'm just really, really moved because what I'm hearing is the courage you all have to love yourself. And so I feel the courage that I have to love myself. And it's grown in this week. It's grown in this week. And I have no idea what I might be faced with on any given day at any time, because we just don't know, do we? But I am proud to be part of this group of humanity. I am so proud. My heart is just, thank you. Thank you. I think really that's just what I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Zenobia.
Go ahead, Beverly. Thank you very much for sharing.
Hi, I'm Beverly, and I'm also moved. This is my first day here. Just had other commitments this week, and I really resonated with the outline of the Courage to Love. Just came and dropped into my email, and also the faith aspect as well. And I really loved the pause to think about courage, because I've had to deal with various situations in the last few years where I felt, well, I just have to do it anyway. I'm scared, and I've faced my fears in numerous ways, mainly through loss. I've had about 6 years of loss, losing different relatives, including my father. And he was one of the people who taught me courage and about giving as well. And I think I was brought up in a family where I felt from a young age I was of service. My father then became a minister when he was in his 60s, Church of England minister. And when he had that transition, I realized why, because of what he had been teaching me all my life about giving. And he actually did say, he always used to say, life is not about helping yourself, it's about helping other people. So I felt that I grew up in this family where I had this tremendous capacity to give. I was involved in social activism from a young age, feminism, always worked for charities. Even in my writing, it was all about off service, and then discovering mindfulness was something different, where I felt like I was stopping, I was pausing from all the giving. Yeah, not sure if I'm making sense, but it's just that idea of being of service and feeling like I had to stop to begin to think about, well, who's loving me? Who's giving to me? And I feel like it's only now that I'm learning about love, even though I know that paternal love, maternal love. I have 6 siblings. We're all scattered apart, as a lot of what you said, Keita, resonated with me around that, around family, being split apart, being disparate, people in different continents. But yeah, I felt that love for myself has always been missing. And I'm beginning to now stop and discover, how do I draw that in? How do I still have that tremendous capacity to give and be of service? But how do I protect myself? And I think when you said also, Keita, about what made me think as well about family, how do I go back and love my family in a different way? How do I talk to people who have been awful to me or have just left me in situations where I had to struggle? How is it possible? I'm trying, I have a faith, and you know, I pray for other people, and I believe in that, in being in meditation and thinking of a person, as Bodhilila said, I think it was Bodhilila who said that, of holding someone in your mind's eye, in your meditation, and sending them love in that way. But how in reality, how does that work? So I think that's where I am, where I find that courage, I have the courage to do it. It's come so easily to me to stand on the edge of a cliff and leap off. I can do it, but yeah. It's just the other things I find difficult. But it's great being here, and I being in these spaces, but in people of color spaces has been so healing for me. It's something that I have denied myself. I just think, oh, I can get along with anyone. It's okay, it's fine. I don't need to be in a safe space to reveal everything. Now I'm here, I realize I have been revealing myself in unsafe spaces all my life. Not that I didn't know it intellectually, but I feel it now in my body.
Thank you, Beverly. I just wanted to just kind of piggyback off a little bit what you said when you spoke about being a giver, and then wanting to find out that, or feeling the need to take a pause in order to receive, or asking the question, well, you know, what about me? And when I first started my service journey as a pastor at 16, one of the first things that I asked my senior pastor was, who counsels the counselor? You know, and then I thought, as I grew up and realizing that whole notion of serving and wanting to serve for me was centered around a belief system that I had to serve, that is what made me me, or that's what I was attaching my belief system to, was the ideal of servitude. And now I've begun to take that pressure off of me, that service is who I am. I'm a human being. It's like a tree gives out oxygen. It's just what they are. And it's not considered an act of service. It's just what they are. And so in return, the giving out of oxygen is not laborious. It's not a labor. It's not something I wake up and have to do or I need to do. So I started to realize, you know what? It's just as a part of me as I am a part of them. And so when I'm giving out, I also looked into their eyes and said, you know what? I can now receive from you as a human being as well. Even though you might need more than you can give, but in the same time, I started to try to find out what that giving is from that other person. So I didn't get so tapped out anymore, you know. So visiting people or going to the office or whatever, or having a counseling session, I decided to breathe in the presence and what they had to give. And it actually helped. It helped them to be able to find purpose within their own selves that they just weren't there to receive and hear from the pastor or from the counselor. So and so for me, it attached that, like, I no longer have to allow what I believe others are expecting of me to now be the driving force and make me who I am each day. So kind of circling back to the beginning of being the courage to love is to be careful and mindful, I would say even better, to be mindful of what you give your power of belief to, because that which you give your power to then you become a servant of that.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just very mindful that when I give my belief to something, and I'll kind of lighten it up. It's like if I'm going to give my power of belief to ice cream, you know, I love ice cream. Well, if I'm not careful, that ice cream will no longer be of service to me. It'll start to hurt me. But I believe it so much that I just have to keep doing it. You know, so now I'm more mindful of what I give my power of belief. It's mine. Yeah. It doesn't need to be subservient to any one doctrine or thing or inclination. And so it allows me to then be open and have more courage to do those things in front of others and be with others. And you had mentioned about family. There's family that I can't talk to, but there's other family I can.
Yeah.
And that family member can talk to that family member that I can't talk to. So I get a broader perspective of where that person who I can't talk to is coming from. And it may open the door and the window for me to at least understand a little bit of why they are who they are and what they've come through as well.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to give this back to William. And he is a little bit more understanding of the dynamics of all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to give it back to him. But I do appreciate just having the opportunity to be able to get to know you and get to know these people. And Rita had her hand up as well, I understand. So we'll just continue to flow that way as well.
I'm wondering if people feel they want to stay a little bit more, because we're supposed to be finishing in 15 minutes. If you're able to stay a little bit more and share a little bit more, because we were exploring having a breakout room, but I'm wondering if the flow of the energy feels right as like this. So maybe we could just keep going. Does everyone want to take a 5-minute break, or should we just keep going? What do you guys want to do?
I'll just say I have to depart at the top of the hour myself, but that's just me. I don't know where everybody else is. And I definitely want to hear Rita before we're going.
I'll just add before you go, Rhonda, that Kita, who lives in California, runs a retreat house. So I just hope that you communicate and that I encourage you to
Yes.
retreat so we can all visit, because I want to see the
We-
Californian.
No accidents here. So Keita and I will somehow connect.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Can I share?
Rita.
Yes, Rita.
First of all, just deeply honored to have witnessed all of you and your shares. And it's something nearly everybody has said has resonated with me in a really deep way. I'm feeling quite emotional, very vulnerable right now. A spiritual teacher of mine reminded me that at the core of all faiths, spiritual paths, is service. And I remember asking him, on those days when, we're being asked to love ourselves, and I just can't find a way to love myself, what do I do? And he said, go and love another, and go and do service and love someone else, that there are no conditions, usually someone outside my family, because then I'm not have any expectations or any conditions attached to it. And so I did. And I did a lot of voluntary work, and I do a lot of other things outside my family or network of people that I could get into a conditional state with. But something you said, Eugene, has just really triggered me today, and it's just very similar. I'm one of 6 siblings. I'm the eldest. I was very much a parentified child. And we're in a similar situation where my mother is dying. And we have a very dysfunctional family, and the siblings, we don't get on. And we're having to communicate. And he said, it was almost like you were telling my story in a way, except that we're really struggling with the communication. So we had a very difficult Zoom after our session yesterday, which was deciding, only 4 of us were able to be there. I have a sibling that's passed away. And whether we would want her to go into hospital or stay at home as the time came. It was a very difficult conversation, but we all agreed on that she wants to be at home and we want her to be at home. But the courage to love was for me to be able to say in that moment, and I've tried lots of times, I've tried through the years to clean my side of the street up, you know, and do my part. And to be able to just say, how can we come together? How can we come together? Because there is this deep core fear, I guess, or sadness for me, grief, I think, more than fear, is that the moment my mum goes, we have nothing connecting us. You know, my mum is she's the one that brings us together. We only, you know, and when she's gone, we may not have much to do with each other. We're completely different paths, we're completely different ways. So everything you've been sharing today, it's bringing up a lot of, this is courage for me to just be here and share this and be vulnerable with it and know that, and what that tells me is that something about our circle here feels safe. Feel safe to do that. And there are not many spaces where I feel that safe. Maybe one-on-one and, you know, that kind of thing, but not in groups. Groups have been really, really tough for me. And I think it comes from a family where, you know, we very dysfunctional family. And Keita, you said some stuff around not being accepted, you know, with the Chinese family, and I have that with the Indian family, and having, you know, anybody that's not Indian, especially Black person in my life, you know. So there's so many things you've all shared that has been really kind of moving for me today, but I'm just really grateful to hear your different perspectives and different ways of, this is courage. This is courage, I think, just to be able to share what's going on and it just be witnessed and be held, and we don't need to do anything about it, don't need to fix it, or don't need advice, don't need anything, just to share our stories in whatever way they need to be expressed. So thank you for this space. Thank you for this very sacred space. And thank you for everyone who's contributed to these days. And I know we've still got another morning tomorrow, but William, especially to you, because I know that you have planted this seed, and it's taken a lot of courage for you too. And I want to really appreciate you, everyone, but I know this has been the seed you planted. So thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you so much. And you got me all, oh man. So, but I know Imani wanted to share too. I know you have to go. So please, Imani, but thank you so much, Rita.
I'll bring some tissues next year.
Thank you so much, everybody, for a very powerful evening. I was feeling quite unwell actually for much of the day, and I must say I'm feeling so energized now. So thank you for that collective energy. You know, when someone is feeling a bit weaker, the stronger ones can hold it and share their energy. So thank you. And Rita, thank you so much for your sharing. It really resonated for me. You know, family is very important to me personally. Not always understood within my family, and I have many families. I have a direct blood family who I'm very close to, but I'm the only Osirian within that family. Everyone else are Christian. I have a spiritual family where I connect on a spiritual level, but there's other aspects of me that I don't feel able to express or share. Which is interesting because more recently I've been getting a lot of dreams about my Kalinago or Amerindian ancestry. And you know, when you're part of many groups that are African, you know, when you have another aspect of you that is coming through in terms of identity, that too can place you in a sense of not feeling you don't fully belong. You're not fully black enough or whatever. Whether that's expressed externally or not, it's something that I've internalized, and what I've realized is I've got to do that work in actually it's okay. This is what our tapestry is. This is the beautiful, unique canvas that we have been, whether it's destiny or whether we are now creating a part of it, it's ours. It's ours to express, it's ours to celebrate, it's ours to live to our fullest. And that's really what I've got from today, is that courage to just allow me to be me without the limitations or the superimpositions of other people. And that might mean embracing that Kalinago part as well as the African. It certainly will mean that now that the dreams have come up. I don't ignore dreams, but it's also, I'm a priestess in my own right. I lean on the fundamental teachings of Kemet, which is about that unification, that oneness with all things, being of service to others, even sometimes where you have a perceived fear that they won't like you or embrace you. It's still being able to, in whatever way, whether it's a prayer, whether it's sending them energies, sending them light, it's still about being congruent. And that's what I got out of today, really, is just being authentic, being true to self, and leaning on these universal principles and laws, whatever label we want to call them. As somebody said, I think it was Bodhilila, all the ancient principles talk of giving, seeking nothing in return. And that's what I will continue doing. So thank you, everyone, for sharing and for your light.
So thank you, Imani.
Thank you so much. Anyone that needs to leave that would like to share before they go?
I'm just
Can
wondering.
I just quickly say, mine is very short and sweet. I keep getting these, William, your newsletter, you send them out and I keep seeing them and I ignore them, delete, and this particular one about this online retreat really caught my eye. I don't know why, but it did. And I thought I'd sign up and paid, and then I turned up last Saturday. And here we are a week later, and it's totally blown me away. I never saw this coming. For me, it was about being busy, and it was about just kind of quieting my mind. And it's been so much more than that. I'm a psychotherapist myself, and I feel like this week's been therapy for me, and so much healing. It's been a difficult week for me with family. I'm not going to say too much because I know it's going to be recording and whatever, but yeah, this group has kind of held me through it all, and to just something about compassion, staying compassionate in the midst of it all. And this morning's standing meditation, standing in my own strength. Yeah, it's just been, so I just want to share, it's been amazing this whole week. And today's, this evening's talk has just, I'm blown away. I don't know where it's going to take me, but it's going to take me somewhere wonderful. Don't know where yet, but I just want to thank all of you. Yeah, it's been really great. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
It feels, every time someone speaks here, it just feels so healing, so like medicine for the soul. But I'm aware Rhonda's got to go, and she's our patron. And so I just wanted to hear from Rhonda before you go, as I guess we won't be seeing you tomorrow. So this is your final words on this occasion, and hopefully you'll be joining us next year.
And hopefully perhaps our paths might cross some other place and time. As you know, I'm out there teaching and offering, and I'd love to reconnect before too long. You can find me at rhondavmagee.com. But I just want to say, maybe just to pause with you, to take a moment. I know you all may continue, but just to take this moment and just feel this unrepeatable gift, as Helen and others have shared. And I want to amplify again. Thank you, William. Thank you, every one of you, for your being here. Absolutely every one of you who shared something that touched me and resonated, which is, again, how the power of groups to reflect back our humanity and, you know, to open up, again, that aperture on, like, how different and similar we all are. So I just want to say how warm my heart is, and how what a blessing you all are in this moment, in this circle of connection, but on this planet right now. What a blessing you all are. So I just deep bows, much love, until we see each other again. Be well, be safe, and stay connected to joy and to health and resources. Be well, everybody.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. See you.
Thank you.
Swabono.
Sawubona.
Sawubona.
Ubuntu. All the good ones. See you all soon.
I see you.
I'm also going to leave at this point.
Bye,
Thank you
Eugene.
very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing, everyone. It's been
Thank you so
really
much.
deep. And yeah, I'll see you all again somewhere along down the line, I'm